Welcome back, everyone. Toni Nadal tuned into that brutal Indian Wells clash where Carlos Alcaraz fell to Medvedev, processed the defeat, and immediately took his unfiltered thoughts on air. The veteran coach bluntly stated the young Spaniard looked completely exhausted. During grueling baseline exchanges, the prodigy visibly lacked his trademark explosiveness, essentially surviving on absolute fumes. Nadal then voiced the exact concern haunting every single debate regarding the top-ranked champion's relentless calendar since late Saturday evening. He suggested the superstar might need to withdraw from upcoming events, warning that pushing forward would guarantee severe physical fallout. Nadal wasn't issuing a direct command, he was predicting a necessary surrender. That specific nuance changes everything. Today's story breaks down exactly why Carlos Alcaraz battled through 17 of 18 possible matchups in 2026, securing 16 staggering victories. He stormed into Melbourne and hoisted the trophy, then immediately conquered Doha to capture another massive championship. Entering the desert entirely undefeated this season, he endured 6 absolute wars in that sweltering California sun before finally collapsing against the absolute deadliest iteration of Medvedev we've witnessed in 2 full years. That magical Melbourne victory demanded an epic 5-set war against Novak Djokovic. It was a brutal 3-hour marathon, marking his absolute most punishing on-court battle since his previous Wimbledon campaign. He previously dismantled Jannik Sinner during a grueling 3-set semifinal. Prior to that desert campaign, he traveled directly from Australia to the suffocatingly muggy climate of Qatar, fighting through 5 extremely grueling showdowns just to lift yet another hard-earned crown. Reaching the desert without a single moment to breathe after his latest conquest, the 22-year-old phenom had already logged an astonishing 17 grueling battles in just 10 exhausting weeks. Toni Nadal's pointed critique regarding those prolonged and breathless exchanges, where the champion looked completely drained of his typical fire, is an insight requiring months of continuous observation and a massive sample size to truly comprehend. You absolutely cannot spot this subtle physical decay by simply watching one isolated tennis match. True mastery demands tracking a competitor relentlessly, fully grasping their fundamental peak of athletic intensity, and spotting those terrifying microscopic fractures between their legendary standard and their current, diminished on-court reality. Having spent decades analyzing top-tier tennis from the absolute inner circle, the legendary mentor possesses an incredibly sharp radar for detecting this precise type of silent, compounding physical toll. So, when he declares the Spaniard's intensity was drastically fading, he taps into an intimate knowledge base totally invisible to ordinary broadcasters who only witness the prodigy occasionally. This is far from just some random, off-the-cuff media remark. This serves as an expert clinical breakdown from an insider who intimately understands the hidden anatomy of a totally burnt-out legend. The young star fiercely rejected this entire narrative the moment journalists cornered him about it during the tense post-match media briefing. One bold journalist pointed out that his body language practically screamed sheer athletic exhaustion. The prodigy blamed the oppressive temperatures and the absolutely brutal geometry of battling Medvedev. He argued that outlasting the Russian's relentless defense demands explosive power on every single strike, insisting his own performance throughout the opening set was actually quite phenomenal. He expertly dodged the fatigue rumors, substituting a purely strategic justification to silence the doubters instead. To be fair, locking horns with the Russian on sun-baked, lightning-fast asphalt creates a uniquely agonizing physical torture chamber that literally no other competitor on Earth can currently mimic. Yet, that clever defensive spin completely ignores the darker truth the veteran coach highlighted, which wasn't about the semifinal nightmare itself, but rather a chilling, tournament-long trend of extreme weariness haunting his footsteps long before he even reached that specific matchup. The cold mathematical reality makes this looming crisis absolutely terrifying. The phenom must aggressively defend 2,340 ranking points before Roland Garros, whereas Sinner only protects a measly 650 points in that span. This massive numerical burden rests heavily on his upcoming campaigns in Miami, Monte Carlo, Barcelona, and Madrid. He took Miami in 2022, Monaco in 2024, Barcelona in 2023 and 24, plus Madrid across 3 consecutive years ending in 2025. Each of these prestigious venues saddles him with the crushing pressure of replicating absolute perfection to maintain his ranking. Missing the championship match at any of these stops will trigger a catastrophic plunge in his hard-earned global standing. Conversely, His Italian rival faces practically zero pressure at these exact venues, thanks to that high-profile anti-doping suspension heavily derailing his 2025 spring calendar. The Italian enters the next 8 weeks, possessing absolute freedom, zero ranking pressure to fear, and an ocean of points ready to be stolen. I genuinely noticed the kid looking pretty physically drained. During several intense baseline exchanges, his typical explosive spark was completely gone, practically running on total fumes. It honestly made me wonder if he'll skip upcoming events. But then again, that top-tier crown is at stake. The situation is incredibly tricky. His core team ultimately holds the cards. That specific parting thought perfectly captures the absolutely brutal dilemma facing this camp right now. The seasoned mentor isn't blindly ordering the superstar to pull out of high-stakes events. He's simply highlighting terrifying flashes of burnout, recognizing those classic red flags veteran trainers spot when an athlete desperately needs recovery time to avoid totally breaking down. My immediate gut reaction questioned whether the young star might actually dial back his grueling itinerary. Yet, within seconds, he confessed exactly why pulling out presents such an absolute nightmare. The ultimate crown hangs in the balance. This impending 2-month warfare separating the Spaniard from his fierce Italian rival marks the highest stakes period of the year, save for the majors. Any event, the defending champion abandons simply hands his fiercest adversary free territory, allowing the challenger to conquer unopposed. That exact paradox, brilliantly captured by the veteran coach, represents the most monumental hurdle facing the prodigious Phenoms team in 2026. Exhaustion demands recovery, yet survival demands victory. These twin absolute truths crash into one another, violently clashing at every single turn leading up to the fierce battles in Paris. Skipping the Florida sunshine drains a brutal 970 crucial points that his current scoreboard cannot afford to lose. Bypassing Monaco bleeds 1,000. Ghosting Catalonia sacrifices 500. Abandoning Madrid surrenders another 1,000. Should the battered warrior actually decide to withdraw from that terrifying 4-part gauntlet entirely, it would hemorrhage roughly 3,500 precious points, practically gifting his greatest rival a golden path to multiple uncontested trophies. That massive gulf keeping them apart at the absolute pinnacle, presently sitting near 2,150 units, would evaporate into dust before anyone even stepped onto the French clay. Every reigning king eventually walks face first into this exact devastating paradox. The very victories that crowned you emperor morph into an unyielding debt you must endlessly repay just to keep wearing the crown. The brutal campaign that forged your glorious empire is exactly what now slowly crushes your breaking body. He blasted into 2026 reigning supreme, armed with an insurmountable advantage forged during a flawless, completely undefeated dirt campaign. Yet those historical triumphs forged his heaviest chains today. Each legendary trophy claimed yesterday guarantees a bloody siege tomorrow, forcing him to fight or bleed devastating position drops. Stepping back isn't an option. Pausing to breathe would instantly annihilate the magnificent throne those past victories so painstakingly built. The legendary Mallorcan bull existed inside this identical brutal crucible for decades. Now, the chilling echoes his iconic uncle points out, regardless of how subtly he voices them, highlight the terrifying similarities between the older icon's ancient wars and this youngster's current struggle. The veteran's eternal romance with the red dirt was forever poisoned by the devastating physical toll demanded by earlier concrete battlegrounds. Over 15 grueling years, he mastered a dark art, sensing precisely when his shattering bones demanded mercy versus when cold, hard arithmetic forced him into the arena anyway. The legendary tactician witnessed every drop of that agonizing tightrope walk firsthand. Nobody breathing on the tour comprehends that vicious, high-stakes math better than him. So when he takes to the airwaves suggesting the prodigy might abandon a few stops, it's never idle speculation. He channels 20 years of cold, hard wisdom regarding the agonizing price a titan pays to stay perched on top forever. Furthermore, tossing ultimate responsibility over to the player's inner circle carries massive, undeniable weight. The wise veteran isn't pretending to possess some classified spy intel regarding the kid's private calendar. Rather, he delivers a chilling outsider's perspective while instantly yielding ultimate authority to the trusted mentors standing directly in the trenches. He isn't barking orders at the star, he's simply watching. What he witnessed during those brutal desert exchanges was a physically shattered vessel, a machine violently pushed toward its absolute redline performance threshold, surviving 17 grueling wars, spanning 10 relentless weeks with zero salvation, silently screaming that any smart mentor who is closely monitoring these frantic warnings urgently needs to huddle up and brutally slash the itinerary for the upcoming 8 thrilling weeks. Will the reigning king actually pull the plug on his looming commitments? His inner sanctum remains dead silent to the press. He locked in his Florida appearance, armed with an opening round pass, while organizers have already selfishly plastered his blockbuster sophomore clash against his rival under the brightest stadium lights. Yet radio silence continues regarding Monaco, Barcelona, and Madrid. His commander remains totally tight-lipped regarding any battlefields beyond Miami. The final trigger, as the wise spectator noted, belongs solely to them. Yet, by broadcasting his grim warnings out into the wild, this narrative, regardless of how the final roadmap unfolds, is ripping the Band-Aid off the terrifying reality of bearing the Spanish crown in 2026. He conquered 17 of 18 duels. He hoisted 2 massive trophies. The kid delivered the most explosive, mind-bending launch to a campaign we've witnessed in eras. And he survived it all, despite navigating vicious countdown timer dramas, the massive target on his spine, plus the messy Ferrero monologue aftermath, and the bone-crushing burden of surviving 17 wars over 10 frantic weeks. It's an apocalyptic amount of weight for a 22-year-old soul. The wise uncle who spent 20 years studying the greatest dirtball gladiator in human history navigate this exact same agonizing tightrope of expectations, spotted the terrifying burnout and sounded the alarm. Given his legendary resume, ignoring his warning is pure madness. Miami kicks off now. Alcaraz will undoubtedly show up. Yet, whether he arrives entirely free from that heavy exhaustion Toni spotted out in the Californian desert remains a mystery that his opening set must immediately begin to solve. Toni's remark strikes directly at the heart of a much fiercer debate regarding the brutal physical toll demanded by today's grueling tennis circuit. Elite competitors must somehow survive a punishing grind, stretching from the January Melbourne Major straight through a pair of blistering hard-court showdowns in March. Then come April and May's brutal clay battles, crashing straight into Paris and Wimbledon, adding the late summer American stretch and autumn's Eastern Tour before November's Ultimate Championship creates a truly vicious cycle, offering absolutely zero time for genuine bodily healing among the sport's greatest stars. At one stage, Toni even suggested shrinking the player's actual equipment. He framed it with humor, yet cleverly highlighted a grim reality. Today's ultra-powerful gear forces athletes to endure far more profound bodily trauma than any legend from previous generations ever faced. Every shot rockets much faster, baseline exchanges morph into absolute wars, while crucial breathing room between points vanishes completely, hijacked by that same rapid-fire pacing currently fueling the massive uproar over strictly enforced serving time limits. The young Spaniard's explosive brand of play uniquely ravages his own physique, draining him far faster during a single clash than nearly anyone else currently competing. He insists on closing out rallies up close, demanding violent sprints straight from the baseline. Logging incredibly long court hours at every single tournament, his grueling marathon exchanges easily outlast the typically efficient strikes unleashed by his top rivals like Sinner or Medvedev. He pours pure, fiery passion into absolutely every single strike he makes, creating a spectacle the fans absolutely devour. Even as his inner circle knows this burning mental fire steals vital energy, completely bypassing normal athletic fatigue. He remains a freakish athlete but still undeniably human. Enduring 17 brutal clashes across 10 weeks, including a legendary 5-set championship war against Djokovic, creates a crushing burden guaranteed to break absolutely anyone, regardless of the invincible 22-year-old engine. Looking deeply at how the legendary Rafael Nadal orchestrated his calendar offers the best blueprint. From a remarkably young age, Rafa realized his violently spinning strokes and deeply punishing physical commitment to every single strike on the court, combined with a fierce soul entirely bound to his warrior persona, meant he could not blindly follow the same grueling itinerary as rivals, boasting a significantly smoother, less taxing game. He strategically skipped events, carefully plotting his beloved dirt court campaign to peak perfectly. Embracing the inevitable drop in world points, he fully recognized the dark alternative was a slow, toxic buildup of weariness, destined to eventually tear muscles rather than just lose matches. By age 30, he successfully conquered 17 massive major titles before his deeply battered frame finally forced a devastating slowdown. This brilliant masterclass in careful pacing is exactly why the young champion and his manager, Lopez, have undoubtedly debated this exact dilemma behind closed doors. Choosing to step onto the battlefield relies on highly complex, deeply hidden calculations completely shielded from the watchful public eye, heavily featuring harsh biological truths, reliably delivered by trusted doctors, the quiet mental fortitude strictly gauged by his trainers, alongside the cold point numbers endlessly crunched by handlers seeking year-end glory. Toni remains entirely locked out of those highly classified inner circle briefings. All he possesses is sharp vision and decades of profound wisdom. Watching closely, he instantly noticed the kid's dimming fire. That vast wisdom pinpointed an insane gauntlet of 17 bouts across 10 weeks as the obvious culprit. Naturally, he immediately broadcasted this unfiltered truth straight over the airwaves. He observes, deeply analyzes, and speaks his mind. How the top-ranked phenom fires back either by strategically altering his tour stops or unleashing fresh fury down in Florida will ultimately expose the raw truth about his current underlying physical state. Back out west, the superstar strongly claimed he had finally cleared his mind, fiercely vowing to fight purely for his own soul and loyal camp. He admitted he must simply embrace the agony and push forward. These sound exactly like the brave deflections of a true warrior surviving the brutal storm from within. Meanwhile, the elder statesman observes safely outside. Both views matter. Yet only one narrative will dictate if this looming exhaustion poisons his entire spring campaign or if a brilliant Florida run miraculously buries the dark worry completely. Grasping exactly how deep weariness silently infects a top-tier champion is truly crucial, mostly because the terrible damage rarely appears in basic post-match box scores. Exhausted warriors can absolutely still claim glorious victory. A profoundly drained athlete might still blast spectacular rockets and consistently maintain service numbers that appear flawlessly healthy. The true curse of exhaustion violently crushes the safety gap between a legend's absolute peak and their devastatingly sloppy basement during battle. It brutally steals their ability to consistently summon unstoppable overdrive, leaving them heavily gasping for air long after the most deeply punishing exchanges. This invisible decline is exactly what the veteran coach noticed when claiming the young prodigy looked utterly spent midpoint. He certainly wasn't calling the overall performance trash, only that his safety buffer vanished. You could feel a noticeable drop in his typical electric vibe between plays, while those signature explosive bursts completely vanished during certain grueling baseline shootouts. That ongoing shot clock drama weaves right into this narrative treated as a side issue, yet striking at the absolute core. For 18 solid months, the Spanish phenom has voiced intense frustration, arguing the strict 25-second countdown is blindly enforced without acknowledging the brutal reality of bouncing back from a lung-busting marathon compared to a simple volley. While he attacks the regulation itself, his underlying grievance paints a harrowing picture of the absolute physical torture raging inside his own muscles. These battles are bodily devastating, and those brutal 30-stroke wars are far from mere accidents. They stem from an explosive, all-out brand of tennis, making that harsh 25-second countdown strike way before his lungs can catch their breath. He has vividly painted this grim reality for journalists time and time again. Toni observed the outward toll of that exact agony once a brutal burden of 17 showdowns piled up over just 10 weeks. Coach Samuel Lopez masterminded the rigorous training camps for the Australian Open, the Middle Eastern Swing, and the California Desert Battles. Absolutely nobody else possesses a clearer, more comprehensive understanding of the intense practice hours, competitive strain, and physical healing required during the first 10 weeks. Consequently, his intimate assessment regarding this sheer exhaustion holds the absolute highest authority and weight. The master plan they ultimately craft, bridging Miami and the French Open, will spring from this deep inside knowledge, completely ignoring outside noise. However, whenever a seasoned legend like Toni Nadal offers an outsider's critique, you absolutely have to listen. This unparalleled viewpoint comes from a mastermind who personally witnessed the devastating fallout of physical burnout firsthand, having steered the most legendary mentorship modern tennis has ever seen. The veteran strategist boldly predicted the young phenom would be forced to abandon upcoming events. The unfolding drama of the next 8 weeks will reveal his accuracy, though one crucial puzzle piece brings the whole narrative into focus. Understand this. The famous coach never claimed the kid played poorly in the desert, only that deep exhaustion haunted him during certain baseline exchanges. Such a sharp, calculated insight brilliantly divorces the brutal reality of bodily burnout from pure athletic skill. He unleashed absolute magic in an opening set against his rival, then ruthlessly dismantled his quarterfinal opponent with surgical precision. Cruising into the Final Four, He survived 5 intense clashes completely unscathed, proving the veteran coach never doubted his phenomenal talent. Rather, he highlighted how that lethal, razor-sharp explosiveness born from complete rest looked unmistakably dull during split-second critical scenarios. Pinpointing that exact nuance forces us to truly absorb the warning, rather than brushing it off as a panic reaction to one singular defeat. He analyzed the entire tournament's grind, spotting a dangerous trend with an eagle eye that has been flawlessly honed over countless decades. Now, the blazing mystery remains. How will the young star and his coach tackle this looming crisis? We absolutely must dive back into the brutal tournament math, as those unforgiving numbers perfectly demonstrate why stepping away is an excruciatingly impossible choice. The Phenom conquered Florida back in 2022, but completely vanished during 2023 and 2024. Because his stored value there sits near zero, capturing the ultimate prize right now would essentially inject a massive 970 fresh ranking points into his arsenal. That haul is absolutely massive, yet dodging the upcoming Monaco showcase his glorious 2024 triumph, carrying a heavy 1,000-point burden erases those gains instantly. Should he abandon the Spanish capital as their reigning Triple Crown king, forfeiting another vital 1,000 points, his supreme global standing faces total annihilation. The sheer 2,340 points looming right before the French. Open acts as a lethal trap for his leaderboard status, meaning his single authentic shield requires him to relentlessly conquer those very events. Absolutely zero shortcuts exist in this springtime gauntlet, allowing him to truly heal while simultaneously gripping the coveted world #1 crown. He could potentially navigate some narrow routes offering a tiny breather, carefully juggling his stamina instead of going scorched earth everywhere, praying those brutal leaderboard calculations magically align before touching down in the French capital. Cracking that exact strategic code is exactly what the player and coach are sweating over currently, while the legendary uncle merely diagnosed why the panic exists. Whatever survival blueprint they forge remains a fiercely guarded secret trapped within their inner circle. Do you believe the veteran mentor nailed it and our boy desperately requires a break before the dirt battles begin? Sound off in the comments below. Plus, if you haven't joined the tribe yet, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to catch every single thrilling breakdown covering the grandest sagas across the tennis universe.